I'm here with my Asian family. We marched when immigrants were criminalized and deported. We marched when children were separated from their parents. We marched for women. During the pandemic, those of us who could marched for Black lives. We helped clean up neighborhoods. We used that time to reckon with our own families the years of learned racism, challenging our elders and advocating for our youth. We have been marching and fighting for a very long time. Today, we are reeling from the pain and loss of lives that are the culmination of anti-Asian hate sentiment growing all around the country. My name is Kem Kuhn. I serve as president of the National Cambodian Heritage Museum and Killing Fields Memorial. I'm also vice president of the Skokie Park District. I want to acknowledge Josina Morena, chair of the Asian American Caucus, who led the statewide vigil yesterday and helped organize today's event. As we spoke with friends and family who have been struggling on how to process our pain and anger from this past week, we recognized that we also needed a place to come together in person to grieve. For our own community, as well as for those outside of our community, to stand with us and to show support and show us that we are not alone. So I thank you so much, each and every one of you, for being here with us today. It means the world to us. I want to thank the Asian American leaders who joined in hosting this event. State Representative Jennifer Gong Gershowitz, State Representative Denise Wayne Stonebeck, Linkwood Trustee Jean Ekezo Halevi, and State Senator Ram Villavalam. Thank you for joining us in this afternoon. Thank you for joining us to honor the lives of those lost in Atlanta and standing up against anti-Asian violence. On Wednesday, the Asian American Caucus released the following brief statement that was signed on to by Governor J.B. Pritzker, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, State President Don Harmon, House Speaker Chris Welch, and many others. The Asian American Caucus is horrified by Tuesday's attacks. The increase in anti-Asian attacks have been fueled by xenophobic and racist misinformation. We stand against hate and violence everywhere. The Atlanta spa shooting was not an isolated incident. We have seen a rise in anti-Asian violence and hate crimes for the last year. According to Stop API Hate, over 3,700 hate incidents have been reported over the last year across the country. Nearly 100 were here in Illinois. 69 have targeted women. This number is believed to be undercounted. Unfortunately, anti-Asian hysteria and scapegoating, like what we've seen during COVID, have led to violence and bad policy before. From the Chinese Exclusion Act and the Japanese American internment, to the murder of Vincent Chin in Detroit and attacks that we have seen recently in Chicago, Asian Americans have faced discrimination, hate, and violence throughout this country. We know that in order for this to stop, not only do our communities, other communities have to stand with us, but we have to stand with other communities as well. Connecting our struggles, educating the community, and building bridges. Standing together is the only way to stop the cycle of systemic racism in our communities and in this country. Racism has no home here. I want to acknowledge our other local leaders who are here with us, standing with us today, including Skokie Mayor George Van Dusen, and Skokie Village trustees Ralph Klein, Ilanka Ulrich, Edie Sue Sucker, Skokie Park District Commissioners President Mike Reed, Commissioner Susan Aberman, Commissioner Manal Desai, Skokie Board of Education members Bushra Amawala, Shireen Lanoine, Cook County Circuit Court Judge Angela Hansen, Cook County Board of Commissioner of Review Michael Cabanardi. We also have with us Niles Township High School District Board members Rich Ivanovitz, and Main Township High School District 207 Board member Jin Lee. Niles Township Government Supervisor Bonnie Khan Angsadi, Neutral Democratic Committee Man Jean Maragos, Niles Township Government Trustee John Belson, State Senator from the 20th District Christina Pasion Zayas, and MWRD Commissioner Deborah Short. I apologize if I left anyone out. But thank you so much for your support and being here today. No matter our differences, our community has always come together in times of difficulty. This is what community is all about. I'd like to introduce Reverend Patty Nakai, a Skokie resident and third-generation Japanese-American woman and minister at the Buddhist Temple of Chicago.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are gathered here to mourn together, to grieve the 8 lives that were lost on Tuesday night in that act of violence. And in the Buddhist sense, we all know that our lives are connected. All those lives that were lost were connected to us. But we also know that this incident that happened was not just out of the blue. It's a result of causes and conditions. The result of long years of causes and conditions, not just one person all of a sudden went berserk, but his acts are a result of many causes and conditions. And those causes and conditions are in our daily lives. It's in the news that we read, the news that's presented to us. It's in our country's history and how that history is presented to us. It's in the TV and movie stories that we see. It's in the advertisements. And unfortunately, it's in many houses of worship when the wise words of the past are twisted to justify one group being worthy and some other group not being as worthy. So all these causes and conditions are in our daily lives. So as we remember those 8 lives that were lost, let us also, in honor of those 8 lives, think about how we can change those causes and conditions, how we can act in our government participation, in our communities, in our schools and churches, how we can act to change those causes and conditions so that all lives are treated as worthy. No life has to be snuffed out for their race, for their gender, for what they do, for their work, that all lives are valued as equal and precious. And now we're going to have a moment of silence for each of the victims.
Sun Chung Park, Hyung Jung Grant, Sun Ja Kim, Yong Ayu, Zhao Ji Chan, Dayu Feng, Delana Ashley Yon, Paul Andre Michaels. I'd like to take this moment to introduce Reverend Song Young Chamari, who is a resident of Skokie and a leader within the Asian American community as well.
Thanks everybody for coming today. Thanks for having me here. Again, my name is Sanya Choi Morrow. I'm a Korean American immigrant, a mother of a daughter at Elizabeth Meyer School, and I'm angry that we have to be here today. I'm angry that people's lives are treated as if they don't matter, and that Asian American women especially have been living with a lot of public safety danger, not just since the pandemic, but for a very long time. We are targets of public harassment, whether it's verbal or physical. People see us as objects. Then I just want to bring into this space the 6 women who died because they were the intended targets, because they were Asian American women. Not just because they were Asian American or just because they were women, but because they were Asian American women. And I just hope that we can all put that in our hearts and not forget that as we continue to talk and have important conversation about racial justice and hate. Let's remember that it has to be about racial justice and gender justice. We have to end sexual violence against women. These women were someone's mom, someone's daughter, someone's sister, and someone's friend. Let's not reduce them to political talking points and sound bites. Let's honor their life and legacy by going to work to end racism and sexism and misogyny in this country. And as a mother of a kid that's just starting out her journey in the Skokie school system, I really want to call on our schools to take racial equity seriously, not just words, and to really create a village where we can be proud of that our kids are learning. They're being politicized at a young age and they know what's right and wrong. I don't want my kid to just learn about tolerance. I want my kid to learn about anti-racism, anti-blackness, and violence against women to not be tolerated. So I hope that any of you, if you're educators here, that you take that to heart. I would love to see a Black Lives Matter sign outside every single school in Skokie. Because this is about all women of color who are hypersexualized in our communities and dying of violence because of who we are racially and as women. So as we continue today, I hope you all just center the 6, especially the 6 victims, because they were the targets. That killer went in there to kill those 6 women. And so let's carry them in our hearts and let's go and take action so that nothing like this ever happens again and we don't ever have to come together to mourn the lives of Asian American women ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Next, I'd like to introduce LU. She's an inspiring student and activist engaged in social and political issues, respected by faculty and students. She's president of the Niles North Student Government Association.
In the past week, I've had a lot of difficulties processing the acts of violence that occurred in Georgia. In my calculus class on Thursday, my teacher spoke of her plans for St. Patrick's Day, and how she had painted her kids' faces and bought them donuts and had a really great holiday. And on the other hand, I woke up the day after St. Patrick's Day with my Twitter feed bombarded with media coverage of the violence, full of headlines that refused to call Robert Malone a terrorist. Today, I think about the time in 6th grade
I can't hear you.
when a social worker told me that my concerns about my mental health and my grades were most likely a product of my Asian parents, and that this was a common occurrence for quiet Asian girls like me. Today, I think about a white girl in my history class who told a friend of mine that I spoke too much about being Asian in class, and that my constant commentary towards race and agency made her friends uncomfortable. Today, I think about my male peers and their microaggressive remarks towards my passion for feminism and activism. Over the course of the past few days, I've questioned and pondered as to why Asian American women have to die when a white man has a bad day. I question why Asian American immigrant women have been and are constantly hypersexualized by the media and historically have been used as tools for sexual violence during wartime as comfort women. I question and reflect on the large acts of gender-based violence on Asian American immigrant women. To see the police response as well as the media's response to these events fills me with anger and further feels that my identity has been diminished. In addition, I felt increasingly uncomfortable and frankly disgusted with the response in my own community and the Asian people in my own community who have chosen to use these acts of violence as a wedge to continue to perpetuate anti-Blackness and diminish the violence and atrocities against Black and brown folks. To see this response in my own community paired with the media and police response, I feel incredibly conflicted, hurt, and angered. As we begin to heal and learn and grow, please support and stand against these acts of hatred. Vocalize your support and check in on your friends. Stop using harmful language and engaging in performative activism, like posting yellow squares or using the phrase Asian Lives Matter, as this diminishes the movement created by Black and brown folks. Understand that systems of oppression are interconnected. To abolish one is to abolish all. Pay attention, be willing to be uncomfortable to grow, and don't be afraid to seek support or help when you need it. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Shireen Lanoine. She's a fellow member of the Fairview Parent Equity Group and District 72 School Board member.
Thank you for having me here, everybody. Last year, on Election Day, November 3rd, 2020, 3 families in our neighborhood were victims of hate crimes. 2 of these families were Asian. 1 family was Indian, 1 was Southeast Asian, and the 3rd was Caucasian. But hear me loud and clear, 3 families experienced hate that day. Witnessing hate, having my children witness hate because of our skin color, because of the way we look, it is painful. It is painful to see people look at you, judge you, blame you, and condemn you because of the way you look. As a mother, and speaking for all mothers out there, we can bear a lot, especially if that means protecting our children. But to have our children witness or experience hatred, that is something I cannot bear. When children experience hatred, it changes them. Whether they see the hatred on TV, social media, it changes who they are. It affects their self-esteem, their self-worth, and their faith in humanity. And all this brings me to the 8 women in Atlanta, 6 of whom were Asian. They were judged, they were condemned, and finally murdered. I ask all of you to no longer accept xenophobic behavior. I ask you to stand in solidarity with all of our Asian brothers, sisters, and children. Hate is everywhere, and so is love and acceptance. But we need to look out for each other. If you see something, say something. Check on your friends and family, neighbors. We have to talk to our children about how all of this is making them feel. How does it feel to be alienated, to be looked at as different? to be looked at as a problem. We cannot make decisions without deep consideration. We have to say something with our voices and with our votes. We have to look beyond yard signs and deeper into what candidates stand for, because this is going to affect our children. Anyone can say that they believe in integrity, but actions speak louder than words. Please, I implore you to be mindful of who you choose on Election Day, on April 6th, and every other election day. With that, I would like to thank the Skokie MWRD Commissioner Josina Morena, Cam Kuhn, the VP of Skokie Park District, and all of the other Asian elected officials that made this event happen today. It's important that we continue to bring light to situations like this and do everything in our power to stand together. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Laura Williams. She's president of People for a Safer Society, as well as a teacher at McCracken Middle School.
Hi, thank you. Thank you all for being here today. I want to thank the Asian American
Not all the way to your
leaders.
mouth. She's actually not all the way to your mouth. I need to use my teacher voice.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Asian American leaders for organizing this event and for allowing me to speak. My name is Laura Williams. My family has lived. Louder! Maybe I don't need it. I don't know.
Just put it all the way to your mouth.
Is this better? Okay, it feels really weird, but thank you. Okay. My name is Laura Williams. My family has lived in Skokie for 17 years, and I've been a middle school teacher in Skokie for 32 years. But today I'm here as the president of People for a Safer Society. PFSS was founded in 2013 after the Sandy Hook tragedy as a way to respond to gun violence. Our focus is on education, awareness, and advocacy regarding gun violence prevention in Illinois. The horrific events of March 16th left so many in our community feeling shaken, fearful, sad, and angry. While I'm not an Asian American, there are many like me who want our Asian family members, friends, and neighbors to know that we hurt with them and we are here for them as allies. We are all so tired of the hate, and the rise in hate crimes in our country over the last few years is truly shameful. Racism and hate are a terrifying combination. Adding guns into the mix makes it a deadly one, as we saw again this past week in Atlanta. When these incidents occur, we often feel helpless and hopeless, but there are things allies can do that make a difference. We find ways to reach out and connect with those affected the most to support them. We make sure to speak up when we see or hear actions and comments that perpetuate harmful racial stereotypes. And we can all work together to strengthen gun laws in Illinois to do everything we can to prevent guns from falling into the hands of those who hate and would do harm. You can show your support for several pieces of legislation that are currently being considered in Springfield. House Bill 3483 would strengthen Illinois' existing firearms restraining order law to temporarily remove guns from people who own firearms and pose a danger to themselves or others. Illinois' law has been underutilized because of a lack of awareness and education, and this bill addresses those issues. Other states have prevented mass shootings and hate crimes through their use of their version of this law. Another important piece of proposed legislation is House Bill 3245, known as the Bio Bill, short for Blocking Illegal Ownership. This would require a background check for all gun sales in Illinois and fingerprinting of firearm owner identification cards or FOID card applicants. It would also enable state police to remove guns once a FOID card is revoked, and it would dedicate life-saving mental health funding for Illinois communities most impacted by gun violence. You can show your support for these bills and honor the Atlanta victims by filling out witness slips, which take less than 2 minutes, and tell their legislators downstate. Let them know that we want common sense gun violence prevention laws now. If you would like more information about these and other gun violence prevention bills, please visit our website, peopleforasafersociety.org. Please pick up a Disarm Hate button from the table here and consider signing up for our emails. Show your support for common sense gun violence prevention legislation in Illinois, as well as solidarity for victims and survivors of gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Denise Stoneman for the 16th District and one of the newest members of the Asian American Caucus.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
Louder. Put the mic toward your mouth.
Is this better? So my name is Denise Stoneman, and I am the state representative of the 16th District of Illinois. I am proud to stand before you as an Asian American woman who was elected to the Illinois legislature to represent the highest percentage of Asian American districts in the entire state. So I want to thank you for coming here on this solemn and painful day for us in the Asian American community. I grew up here in Skokie. My parents came here in the 1960s looking for a community that was welcoming of immigrants, and Skokie is that. And they raised myself and my siblings to be proud of our Asian heritage. And in that, when we were born, they gave each of us an English name, and they gave also a Chinese name. And so today, in honor of the victims of this last shooting, I am Minghua Wong. So I want to reflect a little bit on my father, who immigrated here when he was an adult from China, from Puchao, and he settled in Skokie. He lived his adult life through the age of McCarthyism, the Red Scare, when Chinese people were looked at and suspected of being spies. And you know what? Decades later, here we are still fighting systemic racism. As many of the speakers before me have said, there is still so much progress that needs to be done so that we are viewed as equals, not as invisible. And I am so proud of my fellow elected Asian officials that have organized this. Thank you, Josina and Pam. And all of the other Asian Americans who are stepping up and running for office, getting involved in their communities. There is so much more work to be done. I also want to say that to everyone who is not of Asian American heritage here, thank you for standing with us. This is a painful time for us, so thank you for coming out. I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in the Illinois legislature to combat this and deal with this issue. I am, besides being an elected official currently, I was the founder of People for a Safer Society. So gun violence prevention is near and dear to my heart. And I will be putting forth a resolution in the House on this issue, asking all of my fellow legislators to stand with us and commit to passing legislation that deals with hate and guns as a lethal means. I will also, as a new member of the Asian American Legislative Caucus, we will be putting forth a resolution, a joint resolution that Senator Villabalam, who is our senator in this area, will be filing this week, condemning this shooting of Asian Americans, Asian women in particular. And so stay tuned for that resolution. In addition, we will be looking at our hate crimes law in Illinois and seeing where we can strengthen it. Because every time one of these horrific attacks happens, we have to examine our laws and see where we can improve them. So, again, I want to ask each and every one of you, as many of the speakers have said, to look and ask ourselves what each of you can do to combat racism, hate, and work towards a more accepting, more welcoming society and community. What each of us can do, what the future holds, it's all really up to us. So thank you, and please let's all honor the victims of this shooting with our action. Thank you.
Last but not least, I'd like to introduce a close friend and mentor, someone who have fought many battles together with me while still managing our regular day jobs and our family. And we've done this long before we had kids. So I'd like to introduce Commissioner Josina Morena of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District and Chair of the Asian American Caucus.
Thank you all so much for coming out today, and I really want to thank Kim again for organizing this. This really was her leadership as a mom, as an elected official, as somebody who's been doing this, as you said, before we were moms, but also before we were elected officials. So thank you, Kim, for always being an organizer and a leader. My name's Josina Morena. I'm a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District and proud to chair the Asian American Caucus with Denise and Senator Vigil. I am Chinese and Japanese American. A lot of these issues of anti-Asian hate and discriminatory policy is not new to me or to my family. We were directly targeted by the Chinese Exclusion Act, and my grandparents were interned in the internment camps during World War II. Like many of you, I moved to Skokie because it was so diverse and because it was so welcoming. But as you heard from Shireen, and as many of you may have experienced, we are not immune from racism. We are not immune from hate crimes, hate vandalism on houses just a few blocks from here in the last year have happened. So we have to remain vigilant. Being anti-racist is a verb. It is an action that we have to take on every day, not just against violent acts like we saw this week, but the subtle forms of racism that we see at our homes with family members that we may not agree with. Our silence is complicity. At work, at businesses, when we go out in the park, when we hang out with other parents, we have to continue to be actively anti-racist and to have the difficult conversations with people that we love, oftentimes, that we don't always agree with, but we have to have these difficult conversations. As Representative Wayne Stoneback said, there is a lot that we can still be doing to combat hate and hate crimes in our communities. We have a list of resources on hate crime reporting and training, how to be an ally, how to be a bystander, to help us report hate crimes. Because of the underreporting, we also have resources in Asian languages at our website at www.asianamericancaucus.org. We also have a number of resources around Asian American history. We're still fighting to make it required in high schools, but knowing our history and knowing who we are as a community is an important step for people. To not see us as others, to not see us as perpetual foreigners. We are part of the community here. So please do look at the resources that we have at our website and continue to be active leaders in our communities every day to fight racism. We, again, as an Asian American woman who live here in Skokie, I really want to thank everybody who came out today to show not only your support for our community, but to show that you stand against hate in all its forms, not just anti-Asian hate, but racism, sexism, xenophobia. We all are here to stand with each other. Right, we talk about in this moment, we appreciate everybody standing with the Asian American community, and we as Asian Americans stand with all other communities against all forms of hate and violence. again, on behalf of all of us here standing behind me, we thank you all for coming together. We know that this is the beginning of building a better Skokie and a better community for all of us. This is May. She turned 1 today. Today is her birthday. And you all being here and standing with us is the best gift that I could give her, to know that her community stands behind her. You see her and you support her. So thank you again for everything that you all do every day to combat hate and to support all of our communities here. Thank you all so much for coming today.
Come on in. Hey, Deborah. Oh, no. Deborah. Here. 1, 2, 3.
Hi. Good. Last year, it's going to be, we're all going to miss. Everyone got vaccinated. Well, but we still can't have the. Well, I'm here because it's just breaking my heart. All the events.
Watching her eat the board while we're talking. Yeah, you want to go?
You want to give them a